Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this explainer. You're tuning into the Stylo News Intel update for a comprehensive Middle East situation report. Today is August 19th, 2026. In a world where headlines are often loud and confusing, our goal this morning is pretty simple. We're here to calmly and professionally deliver the facts, breaking down the primary patterns of events across the region. We're going to look impartially at the strategic realities on the ground and examine the perspectives of key decision-makers without bias, all to give you a steady, clear understanding of where things stand today.
Before we dive in, we do want to acknowledge our sponsor, ProWave AI. They're the developers behind Stylo Intel. That's the AI-powered open-source intelligence program used by professionals worldwide. They're also the creators of Stylo News, the commercial intelligence platform available on the web and through mobile apps, which makes bringing this level of deep-dive analytical reporting directly to you possible.
All right, on the desk today, we have a clear roadmap of the region's current flashpoints. We'll be looking at the Gaza disarmament deadlock, Lebanon's institutional fragility, Iran and Gulf coercion, Yemen's infrastructure vulnerabilities, and we will wrap things up with a strategic forecast.
Let's start with Section 1, the Gaza disarmament deadlock, and the diplomatic gridlock we're currently seeing.
To ground ourselves in the physical territory, we're looking at vital crossing corridors, like Erez in the north and the Rafah area down south. Right now, intelligence estimates show that ceasefire, hostage, and withdrawal negotiations are essentially stalled. And the core of this impasse? Well, it isn't necessarily about territorial boundaries at the moment. It's actually about military capabilities, specifically the disarmament of militant forces within these zones.
So what's driving this? It really comes down to two mutually exclusive prerequisites. On one side, Israeli leadership, notably Prime Minister Netanyahu, is firmly rejecting any plans for Gaza that lack genuine, verifiable disarmament of Hamas before any major Israeli military withdrawal. But on the flip side, intelligence assesses with high confidence that Hamas views holding onto its weapons as absolutely essential. For them, it's about internal legitimacy against rival Palestinian factions and maintaining bargaining power. Giving up those arms voluntarily before getting political or territorial guarantees just fundamentally contradicts their core institutional identity.
This brings us to a really crucial gap, the divide between official diplomatic frameworks and what observers are actually seeing. Officials are floating ideas like Palestinian-led weapons storage or using third-party monitors like Turkey and Qatar. But if you look at open-source sentiment across international news, independent journalists, and social media commentary, there is widespread skepticism. Analysts and the public broadly agree that proposals that defer disarmament or keep weapons under local control just don't equal true demobilization. Because of that, a voluntary handover of weapons is assessed as highly unlikely in the near term.
Moving geographically north, let's head into Section 2, Lebanon institutional fragility and institutional weakness. Geographically speaking, state and non-state authority deeply overlap in this region. The friction zones in southern Lebanon stretch all the way up toward the Beirut vicinity. This is an area where the sovereignty of the Lebanese state directly collides with heavy, localized military friction involving Israeli forces and Hezbollah.
The intelligence reporting paints a pretty stark picture of the Lebanese government right now. Yes, it's functioning, but it remains structurally brittle. It still has diplomatic agency, and it coordinates with the Lebanese armed forces, sure, but it simply lacks the coercive power to enforce full sovereign control over armed actors in the south. Consequently, the state is leaning heavily on external mediation to manage the conflict. Meanwhile, domestic social media and public discourse are reflecting a lot of growing frustration. People are criticizing the government's inability to turn diplomatic talks into real, tangible security gains. So while the state isn't facing imminent collapse, it is under immense pressure.
Zooming out a bit, we arrive at Section 3, Iran and Gulf coercion, looking at the macro-strategic layer. Here we have the Strait of Hormuz. As you know, it's a narrow, absolutely critical choke point for global energy infrastructure and maritime traffic. Regional intelligence estimates are focusing heavily on this specific geographic node when they assess the current escalation environment.
Over the reporting period we've analyzed, the primary threat patterns actually haven't involved a massive conventional state-on-state mobilization. Instead, the risk has really spiked in the maritime and gray zone domains. We're tracking elevated threats to Gulf Cooperation Council maritime traffic, and that includes reported strikes on Aden OSINT tankers. What this pattern reveals is a heavy reliance on deniable proxy networks to exert pressure. And, while there are no verified imminent threats to Western embassies right now, the risk to Western military nodes, logistics hubs, and naval assets in the region definitely remains elevated due to this distributed pressure campaign. To summarize the strategic intent of Iranian leadership, intelligence analysts point to a very specific approach. Tehran continues to favor calibrated, deniable, and multi-front proxy pressure over a single, decisive conventional attack. By utilizing aligned networks across multiple theaters, they can sustain deterrence and economic pressure, all while minimizing the risk of a full-scale conventional war. It's a calculated way to maximize their strategic signaling.
Now let's head down to the southern edge of the Arabian Peninsula for Section 4, Yemen Infrastructure and Escalation, looking at the ongoing flashpoints.
Focusing our attention on the Red Sea approaches, the Bab al-Mandeb Strait and coastal infrastructure, specifically the Al-Maha or Mocha port, represent a critical node. This entire area is essential for both local stability and international maritime traffic, and, as you might expect, it has recently been a major focal point for military action.
The facts on the ground really highlight the fragility of the internationally recognized government. While they are capable of tactical actions in areas like Marib and Al-Jaf, recent Houthi drone and missile strikes on the government-held Mocha port and positions in Marib show a real inability to fully secure critical infrastructure and rear logistics areas from standoff attacks. Their continued stability doesn't rest on internal dominance, rather it underscores a heavy structural reliance on the Saudi and UAE coalition.
Finally, let's look ahead in Section 5, Strategic Forecast and Wrap-Up, covering the regional trajectories.
To give you some actionable foresight, intelligence analysts have pinpointed specific events that could rapidly alter the current strategic balance. These are your escalation triggers to watch. Keep an eye out for direct Israeli strikes on Iranian territory or senior personnel, any mass casualty events in Gaza that are blamed on Israel, or the collapse of negotiations regarding the Strait of Hormuz, especially if that's paired with the U.S. force buildup. Monitoring these specific tripwires is going to give us the clearest indication of whether the current calibrated pressure is about to shift toward a broader regional conflict. And that brings us to the end of this morning's Explainer. I want to thank you for joining us as we parse the intelligence to bring you the unvarnished facts. If you value this level of objective analysis, we highly encourage you to listen to the Stylo News Intel Update podcast on your favorite channel, or just follow the link on this post. You can also get AI-powered news on demand anytime at stylonews.com. As these tripwires sit on a knife's edge, we want to leave you with a question to consider today. If just one of these localized flashpoints triggers a broader regional reaction, is the international community truly prepared for the immediate economic fallout? Thank you for listening and have a steady, informed day.